Jim Duke Radio Network. A rational voice in a world of conspiracy. Jim Duke Perspective.
Hey, Darren, how's it going?
Jim, I'm doing real good, thanks.
All right. You cut out for a second there. I don't know what happened.
I had it on mute.
Oh, okay. All right.
I had to unmute myself.
Recently a couple friends on Facebook put out a post regarding George Bush. Have you ever tried to trace his genealogy? Because we have, and there are people that trace the presidents back and found out that they all go back to dignitaries. They all go back to royals. They all go back to, a lot of them go back to Vladimir, the Impaler.
You mean Dracula? Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah.
All of them, they're all related.
And Bush and all them. But I found an interesting characteristic about George Bush's genealogy. You know, he's the beloved character, isn't he? Like, Republicans love George Bush, George H.W. Bush, George W. Bush. You know, remember they got behind him, them, and they rallied against, behind the family. You know, they were the best thing since,
sliced bread.
Well, since Carter, I was going to say, but okay. But there is a lot of controversy that surrounds this elite family, who we find at the scene of a lot of critical crises in history. The Bay of Pigs at Cuba, Operation Zapata. George H.W. Bush was involved. JFK assassination, claims he wasn't there, but they have pictures of him with CIA agents. And then 9/11 with George W. Bush. And also in the book Bloodlines of the Illuminati, Fritz Springmeier rates them as one of the Illuminati families.
Wow.
Not the
I'm
top
not surprised
13.
at all.
Yeah, they're one of the elite families that go back to days of elitism, changing their names through the years as they often do.
That's the Crown Council of 13 Satanic Bloodline Families.
Yeah. And, the Illuminati are a special breed of families that they groom them for special operations and things in society, prestigious positions that they gain dominance in. The Rockefellers and the, Rothschilds, of course, and, different families that are part of the elite. So there was this young man, Erik Berman, who came across this guy, Otto Skorzeny, who was an agent who served as Hitler's close-in bodyguard and was a spy and assassin for the Nazis. It just so happened this Berman character, this young man, Berman, dated this girl, and it was this Otto Skorzeny's daughters, one of his daughters. And he got to know Otto. Before his Skorzeny's death in 1999, this guy Berman shared a lot of information with him. Sort of like, when you have something on your mind, you want to tell somebody that you can trust. So he shared his deathbed confessions with this Berman, revealing many things that would shock the public. And the testimony was accompanied with a box of photos to elaborate Skorzeny's stories to prove that what he was confessing. He showed pictures of himself with dignitaries, himself with Hitler, and himself with these other characters. And I'm going to base it basically on the information given by Erik Berman, who goes by the name of, I can't remember, he goes by a different name, Eric Orion, I think it is. He wrote a book called The Bush Connection, based on all this information. And there's another journalist, investigative journalist named Don Nikoloff, who researched further the information and connected more of the dots about this information. So let's begin with the story telling you who Skorzeny is. He was a German serving under Hitler as a bodyguard and spy assassin, and he came to the U.S. after the war under Operation Paperclip, as many other scientists did. Von Braun Braun and all these scientists that were supposedly migrated over here because we wanted to extract the Nazi information.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy had connections not only with Hitler and the Nazis, but also with the Bush family. He was actually instrumental in merging the Nazi SS with the OSS in the United States that formed into the CIA with Bill Donovan and Alan Dulles. But there's an established history that Prescott Bush had an affiliation with Hitler and the Nazis, and there's no surprise there. You heard the stories, right? Prescott Bush was the financier for Adolf Hitler. As an American,
Wow.
he was tried aiding and abetting the enemy, but he got off. Now, how did he get off? Because the family has power, obviously, or has connections. Now, one of these confessions was secrets about the Bush family, which upon the death of George H.W. Bush in 2018 ended, the need for secrecy with, so many foreign affiliations, assassinations, genocides, and murder that were associated. The Bush family had been noted as America's royal crime family. They're known as an American royal family. So in the testimony, a character came up, George H. Scherf, Sr. He was Nikola Tesla's trusted assistant.
Wow.
So this is where the story begins that we're going to tell.
Tesla, he's quite a brain.
Yep. So the shoebox that Skorzeny gave Berman was filled with over 100 photographs spanning a period of more than 60 years. And it was just usual family poses taken at weddings, anniversaries, holidays, family reunions through the decades of 1930s and 1990s, which this guy was involved with, family photos. But the thing that was extraordinary is that the identity of the individuals in these photos that Otto showed posed himself with several high-profile Nazi officers, along with Prescott Sheldon Bush and his wife, Dorothy Walker Bush, their young son, George Herbert Walker Bush. However, other research finds that Bush had a sketchy tracing that leads back to perhaps being none other than George H. Scherf himself as an alias. That's what the suspicions is.
That's amazing.
So, following Skorzeny's death in 1999, Berman gathered additional information about Skorzeny's Nazi cohorts and put this story together, and they kind of put it into a copyrighted publishing manuscript in the Bush connection. Now, what was the motive of these accusations? Why would this guy give Berman all this information? Well, Skorzeny claims that he revealed that he's telling him this stuff to extract revenge against the Bush family, along with his former CIA cohorts for cheating him out of large sums of money during his lifetime that was owed him. He felt in his dying years that he could trust Berman and share the information with him, and he was trusted to get the story out as a young Jewish man, and it seemed like a logical motive that he would want this information out and why he would allow this guy to testify, to give the testimony out there. Now, what was the connections to Tesla? Let's talk about that for a second. It begins with the affiliate of Nikola Tesla. His inventions, believe it or not, were financed by elite like J.P. Morgan, Westinghouse, and John Jacob Astor. What are they? Illuminati families. Tesla was deep in the research in his labs, so many of his financial and legal affairs had to be supervised. He he brought on George H. Scherf to help him. And this George, young at the time, allegedly was snooping around Tesla's lab that made Tesla even remark to others that this suspicious little monkey's hanging around, and he dubbed him the title of Curious George. That sound familiar?
Yep, I remember that book.
That's where that name comes from.
Wow.
So Scherf advised Tesla about pending patent litigations, contracts, proposals, demonstrations, and financial affairs. Now, George Scherf wrote to Tesla in correspondence at Colorado Springs, sent to Tesla on company letterhead containing the company's headquarter address of 8 West 40th Street in New York City. Tesla responded back to Scherf's letter. However, his response was addressed to George Scherf in Union Sulphur Company, 17 Battery Place in New York. This was property owned by the Rockefellers. And they own many companies with offices there. So this
Not surprised.
This ties Scherf with the Rockefellers now. Now, on January 4th, 1943, George Scherf visited Tesla for the last time. Tesla was found deceased in his hotel room 4 days later. Skorzeny claimed that he tricked Tesla into revealing the full details of his discoveries before stealing them and orchestrating the assassination on him, insisting that it was Reinhard Gellon and George Scherf who murdered Tesla by strangulation suffocation. Now, there's an article that read, following Tesla's death, the U.S. Office of Alien Property, under the instructions of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, confiscated all of Tesla's papers and property. This, however, was claimed to be an interesting maneuver, considering that Tesla was considered a U.S. citizen. Scherf Jr. explained to Hoover that he had worked for Tesla and was entitled to his papers and other effects, expressing concern that a foreign government might be interested in his inventions. Now, here's where the story gets interesting. According to investigative researchers, there exists no legitimate record of a George H. Scherf being born in the U.S. between 1800s and 1925. He immigrated from Germany. Otto Skorzeny claimed that George H. Scherf had a son, George H. Scherf Jr., who was trained as a spy and sent to America to work for Adolf Hitler. He was given false identity and adopted by Prescott Bush as his son and took on the name George H.W. Bush.
Incredible.
While he was being bred to work for Adolf Hitler. But we don't see this narrative. We don't, written in books. We see how George H.W. Bush grew up, and, you know, they fake these narratives sometimes, guys. But it's also been rumored that Prescott Bush, when they said he adopted this guy, it was rumored that it was possibly Prescott Sheldon Bush was actually George Scherf Sr. I don't have proof of it, but that's what the claim is from people that research this. Now, interesting, they have connections with that Walker family, George H. Walker. That's where he gets George H. Walker Bush. They use that tie too. So there's connections with the Walker family, another rabbit hole that we have to eventually go down. Now, research of the life of Otto Skorzeny revealed that he had a little-known affair with this woman, Eva Perón, wife of Argentina's president, Juan Domingo Perón. There was gold which was stolen by the Nazis and laundered by Swiss banks and the Vatican, then smuggled to Argentina by Admiral Wilhelm Canaris. It accrued enormous interest after World War II. And upon his death, Upon her death, Eva Peron acquired this money and gave it to Skorzeny as a benefactor. $100 million was to be given to him, but it fell in the hands of the CIA and they confiscated it. That's what his problem was. And based on his claims, this money, he believes, fell into the hands of the Bush family and their handlers. That's what their claim is.
Well, I know the Bushes have a lot of money, so.
Yeah. Well, they were tied with oil. They were oil miners. And one of the elite families that they had ties to was Osama bin Laden family. Mm-hmm. The bin Ladens were very close to the Bushes. This is why in 9/11 and all this other stuff, and it's around 9/11 now, is that all this stuff ties in. This stuff was blamed on Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden and the Bushes were close. Bush supposedly didn't know nothing about these acts that were going to happen, but yet he was given privy some information, and there's others that came out and said they had prior information, and FEMA happened to be set up the day before. A lot of sketchy stuff around 9/11. We've done it in the past, so I didn't want to do it this time, but we've analyzed some of the sketchy reports. But also it was rumored that Osama bin Laden was a CIA asset. Mm-hmm. What was the name? He was called Tim somebody. There's a name that he was given as a CIA asset. So, these guys are often given immunity. But, then they said Osama bin Laden was killed. And nobody saw his body. Nobody saw his ashes, right?
Nope.
So who knows? Could have been set up. So Skorzeny worked with George H.W. Bush as well, who is Nazi infiltrator George H. Scherf Jr. in reality, and Nazi spy master Reinhard Gehlen, and then Wild Bill Donovan, who was compromised, and Alan Dulles, and Alan Dulles is, I think it was his brother, or relations was part of the CFR, and these guys have ties with everything to do with shifty suspicions. But Skorzeny claimed central responsibility for setting up the Odessa operation to relocate 50,000 Nazis into North and South America with CIA protection. Now, Skorzeny claimed that Reinhard Gehlen, Joseph Mengele, who was renamed Stephen Rebel, and George H.W. Bush directly participated in JFK's assassination. I never heard Joseph Mengele? Wasn't he like Dr. Death or something? He was at the helm of the Nazi MK Ultra, Nazi experiments that turned into MK Ultra.
I'm not actually sure on that one.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But I was surprised to see that he was involved. And then, of course, like I said, Bush had several connections to oil groups and intel agencies, alleged affiliations with the CIA. And then he denied having associations with the CIA, H.W. Bush, before being made director of the agency in 1976 by Ford. Now, people want to give Republicans a pass at being, corrupt. But this guy has corruption all over it. The Republicans are just as notorious for, they're both given roles. Democrats are given roles of socialism. Republicans are given roles of capitalism. So, Republicans are associated with the banks. Democrats are associated with globalists and all this other stuff. And both of them are associated with the same at the top. They're run by the same agencies, the same intel, the same bankers, the same elite, the same financiers. But they put a facade over our head. So we think that the Democrats have this plot. You know how people say the media is Democrat biased? They're not Democrat biased. They're globalist biased.
Exactly.
They're one world government biased. Mm-hmm. But the face of it is Democrat because the Democrats notoriously side with globalism, socialism, one world government, and the Republicans don't. But the Republicans do behind the scenes lean everything towards globalism.
Mm-hmm.
Just the same. I mean, look at this. And we brought this up, Darren. Every right we lost as citizens with our freedoms weren't done by Democrats. They were slipped in by policies of Republicans. The Patriot Act, the Security Act, which actually surrenders your rights under martial law, giving emergency executive order to the president. That was all Republicans. Spying on you, putting cameras up in the name of terrorism. That's all Republicans, folks.
They're the terrorists.
Yeah.
Yep.
But people want to take sides because they want to take sides of the ideology. They believe they're following an ideology. Republicans generally stand for traditional capitalist constitutional government, right? And Democrats are evil, socialist, commie, Nazi, liberal, agents, right?
Right.
Because that's the facade. So we don't want to vote Democrat. We want to vote Republican, right? Because that's more libertarian. It's more, conservative. But they're
Freedom.
But they're basically labels that they put on these things to contain us and steer us along with the politics.
You're right.
That's all it is. It's a facade. And it's hard. I have friends and family who are now just starting to see this. So they're coming around. They still adamantly, just like we all were, Darren, you and I, we knew this or we suspected this, but we still voted. I don't know about you, but I still voted up to, a certain time, that I still had hope in what the narrative of the party wanted. And I wasn't registered. I never registered. I actually did register Republican once for a short time, but I've never been in a registered party. I've just been neutral. But when I vote, I've tended to vote conservative as versus socialist, right? Just as we all did, right? We don't want to vote for the socialists, communists, right?
No, not in this land of the free.
Yeah. So if we're going to vote, we're probably going to vote the what do they call it, the red line or whatever the line is, But that doesn't mean that it's going to do anything. But, for those that say you got to put your vote in, I also don't agree that you're putting your vote in for anything really worth anything besides standing out for a protest. Your vote's basically a protest. That's all it is. And if that's what makes you feel comfortable, fine. I'm not going to tell people not to vote. I'm just saying, don't think that because somebody doesn't vote that they don't have a say in anything, because you don't really either. And don't think because a person doesn't vote that, that they've given up on, society or whatever. It's just that we don't trust the government. We don't think that I believe that this stuff is rigged. Sorry, I do.
I do too.
So incidentally, this George H. Scherf Jr., a.k.a. George H.W. Bush, ended up becoming the 41st president of the U.S. And why is this important? Well, if this George Scherf Jr. if that's his real identity and he grew up in Germany or he was not really born here, then who do we have to say that Obama shouldn't be legitimately president because he wasn't born here? How do we know any of these guys were born here or not? You know what I mean?
With his fake 14-piece birth certificate. Yeah, I've seen the forensic evidence of his birth certificate. It was pieced in 14 separate pieces.
That's such a farce. And plus, they used something that looked like the application for the registry, not the actual birth certificate itself. It's just these guys. Did you see the book out? Incidentally, that came out. This guy that knew Obama growing up actually came out and started testifying, saying that I don't know how it's kept a secret, but Obama was always associated with having going to the gay parties and stuff.
I think everybody knows that by now.
I know, but it's funny that they're now a book out. They're trying to bring this out. But why is this stuff important? All right, I try to share this stuff with people that it's important because we tend to want to trust these parties. We tend to want to trust politics. And of course, it forces us to have to trust these leaders as legitimate protectors of the citizens. That's what they're supposed to do. Leaders of the nation, defenders of truth and justice, keeping us free, right? But then we find out that they're agencies, they're agents of something else. Their loyalty isn't for this country. It's for an elite agenda, undermining the things of the government. I mean, when we find out that the school education system was given under jurisdiction of the foundations, and then we find out that the foundations wanted to run a globalist agenda, why did the U.S. government give it in the hands of the foundations in the first place?
Because it's evil.
Yeah, but why did the government, who's supposed to be good and godly, allow these foundations to write the curriculums? Mm-hmm. And then those same agencies, those same foundations admitted to the watchdogs of them who were supposed to watch that they weren't undermining America, admitted, oh yeah, we're here undermining America and writing a script for the students to indoctrinate them to socialist-style mindsets. Yeah, what are you going to do about it? Well, what was he going to do about it? But why did they let these people step in place? You know why, Darren? Because their benevolence sold them for the money. They're philanthropists. They can gain a lot of funds from these people. So of course they use these people to build colleges, build education systems. Darren, I mean, if you had somebody, hey, buddy, I'm going to offer you $1 million and help you get your ministry going, you might just say, oh, okay. Not to realize that these people put their own agents in place, and they said, mm-hmm. Oh, we're gonna put our own leaders in there, and then they confiscated your ministry.
Kind of like the 501c3 with the tax exempt status. Yep.
Well, that's more of a tax exempt status that kind of redirects and labels the organization to be an entity of the state. Whereas, it's kind of the same thing. Yeah, it's kind of the same thing because you're still taking favor for something in return, and that's how these guys get confiscated. That's how they confiscate the education system. Hey, we'll build you libraries, we'll build you schools, and little do you know, they're running them mm-hmm. with their agenda. That's what they planned on doing. So
just like with the school system.
Yeah, that's what the education system is. Yeah, and then these guys become presidents, and we trust them. So this is my beef with this, and this is why we're bringing this out, because we want to tell you what we discovered, and you can check it out for yourself and see if it holds water with what you find out. It was also revealed, by the way, by Skorzeny that. There was a fake suicide of Hitler in a Berlin bunker, corroborated by 1948 CIA interrogation of Gestapo chief Heinrich Müller, the Norden report, and the Russian 1946 investigative committee report to Stalin. That I think he had an escape route to Austria, I think is what we heard. And some people suspect that too. All right, we'll close it there. And I just want to remind you, I'm on all the your favorite apps, your favorite players. We're on all of them. And, we offer this podcast for free, but you're free to give if you feel this information is helpful by supporting us on Patreon at Jim Duke Perspective, or you can give a one-time PayPal gift. The link is on the sidebar. But most important I ask you to share this information and at least tolerate the few ads that I have on here. I allow the network to put on ads. It helps pay for this because, it's a lot of money to do this that I just can't afford. So this is all I ask of you, if you can at least bear that. So see you next time, and thanks for listening. God bless.